Compton. Welcome to Control Talk Now for the week ending September 4th, 2016. It's Labor Day weekend and talking all things controls and smart buildings on the Control Trends Smart Buildings Podcast. So without further ado, let me introduce you to your co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, just back from California, Kenny Smyer. Kenny, welcome to the show, Big Dog.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. We got in late last night, or early this morning, I guess is more appropriate, but had a wonderful, combination business, personal trip out to Las Vegas, where I got the chance to see the 2016 Control Trends Awards venue firsthand. Got to work through the actual venue and see where the stages are, how we're going to put the show together, where we're going to set up the red carpet. Just one of those granular visits where you have to do it in order to be able to talk intelligently and get the show going. So that was very, very good. And then, hang on.
Let me be the first to say happy birthday to you.
Oh, dear.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. Controls President. I'll tell you what, for those listeners who might not know, Ken Smyers had a big birthday out in California, and you got to see your daughter out there, and what's
saw
up?
both daughters. Stephanie came in from Connecticut, flew in, and then Sabrina and her husband Brendan. They took care of me. They came from San Diego, drove to Las Vegas, and then we drove with them back out to California, with a couple of points in between. Had a marvelous helicopter experience with the Maverick helicopter company. That is something.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this, because we're taking a little look at it now. We're seeing the footage of the man, the myth, the legend in a helicopter. Now, are you flying this thing, Kenny? Tell us what's going on.
No, I'm actually. It's a. Let's see. 3 people sit up front and 4 people sit in the back. So it's a 7-seater, and I was on the back set of seats closest to the window, and it is an experience. I was in the military for a while, and I've actually ridden in helicopters, but never one this where I was actually sitting right behind the controllers. I was strapped to the side once on a recon mission, and that was thrilling. But this was just pure excitement, because we were going down into the Grand Canyon. So they take off and they go through the saddle of these mountains, and then you go down into this. You go through this effect, and they set it up real nice. You're flying along flat ground for about say 20 minutes, and all of a sudden the bottom falls out, and you get this sensation that you're like a little mote of a speck of dust inside this 5,000 foot drop. And then they go down into it, and there's all kinds of rules and regulations. Nothing's easy. These guys they have to fly on the right side of the Grand Canyon with the Indian side, because they got the permissions. They pay for the right to travel through. The left side belongs to the federal government, and you're not allowed to meander into that side to break the airspace or something. So, but you fly a very very interesting thing, and you're looking at. I think so. It's the widest point. It's 14 miles. Then it's close. Is like a mile and a half. It's 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet from top to bottom. But you're covering at the bottom is 2 billion years. Rocks supposedly 2 billion years old, and then up top is 150 billion years old. And you just get to see this incredible stratification. Where they show there's fossils from mountains. From seabeds on top of these. Plateaus and even the mountains. So the Earth's been around a long time and gone through some incredible tectonic changes. And the guy that's the helicopter guy gives you this fascinating, a geological synopsis of Grand Canyon. It's just really, truly breathtaking. If you can do it, do it.
Yeah, it looks spectacular, Kenny. And what can you tell us about you also went to Las Vegas and checked out the venue for the 2016 Control Trends Awards at the Hard Rock Cafe. What can you tell us about this venue?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's the Hard Rock Cafe has been a blessing to what we're trying to promote, and that is that this is a larger-than-life event to recognize heroes and superstars. So when you go into this event, or into the venue, the bottom's basically commercial, and they've got some restaurants and some souvenir shopping to do, and then this next level's a restaurant sort of thing, and then the third floor is for the events. I got to see the guy. I'm trying to think of his name, but he is a one-hit wonder. He was warming up while I was walking through with the representative. I have her name here somewhere. Very nice woman. Sarah wasn't able to make it. This was her assistant. So we got to go into the rooms. Like they have a cavern room, for instance, and the cavern room's obviously named named after the Beatles, the inception of the Beatles, where they started out with Pete Best, and Pete Best's mother set up basically a place for them to play in their house. And so all these artifacts are still available for sight, for inspection. They're on the wall, and it's just incredible. If you are a Beatle fan, this place is the place to go to. It's like a museum. It surely is. But it's right next to the place where they have live concerts on a daily basis. So you have this incredible space where you can sit down, have a plated meal, really enjoy it. The stage is spectacular. It's not as big in proportion as the one in Orlando, but it's very conducive to what we're trying to do. And that is recognize the heroes and superstars, really get the opportunity to come together as an industry and really feel it. Really feel like you attended something spectacular, like a Hollywood event, because we'll be able to set that up right there in Las Vegas Strip.
No, we will, Kenny, for sure. So we're on with that. And I tell you what, let's acknowledge our two sponsors this week. We got a bunch of sponsors. There's still sponsorships available, but every week we try to acknowledge two of our platinum sponsors. And we got EasyIO, our friend Mike Marston. And talking about the Cavern, we're going to talk a little bit about Mike. He is one of the first people on Control Trends People, the new podcast we're putting out. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the show. Mike's episode has not aired yet. But Kenny, I can pretty much tell you the Cavern's very befitting for Mike, because little known fact about Mike, he was a sixth Beatle. So I learned that when we did the podcast with Mike. But EasyIO, what can you tell us about EasyIO, Ken? And then we'll get to our second sponsor, which is KMC Controls.
Well, the thing about EasyIO, Eric, is we've watched them come from, kind of start out in the North American market and then watch them. They were a global brand before I think I really understood what global meant. I mean, they literally make one product. They make a 32-bit Ethernet-based HVAC controller and solution. They've been doing it for 12 years now, but now they have over 100,000 controllers deployed worldwide, and it seems like the sky's the limit for these guys because they fill that small space. They can do it all. They can integrate into a backnet controller mode where you can bring it up on your network. It can work as a server, a client server, so it can actually handle other backnet products, VAVs and whatever. And then its embedded tools are incredible. The embedded set that they have in EasyIO 32 FG32 Plus is amazing. So you've got your a very consolidated solution. You've got graphics. You've got visualization. You've got analytics. You've got the work tool that you can do all your programming. So EasyIO has been very successful, and the sky's the limit as they hit the markets over there in the Pacific East. You got the Malaysian market, the Indian market, the Chinese market, and they're seeming to be just going at this thing leapfrogging. While you also have Europe, Johan Schockelrod and the European version of EasyIO is really working at Easy Stack. They've come up with a solution that's it's very formidable. And again, visit the site easyio.com, and you'll just get the feel for the company growing in dimension and proportion.
Right, absolutely. And Mike Marston, EasyIO, Gordon Chan, and they've always supported the Control Trends Awards. They've always been the first ones to step up and be a platinum sponsor. Mike, along with Eugene Mazzo from DG Logic, who's now part of Acuity Brands, have always been there right off the bat. So we really, really appreciate those guys. Mike also does a show on Control Trends called Control Pub Talk with Mike Marston. So where he talks controls in pubs around the world. He travels a lot. He works a lot. He's one of our favorite people. And then I think KMC Controls has come on as a platinum sponsor again. We talk a lot about KMC, Kenny. I think that, they are really geared up to winning what we call the race to the small space. Our guest this week is going to be Ken Sinclair. We're going to talk a little bit about, the race to the small space and some of the players that are there. But when I think about KMC Controls, I think about a family business that is really nimble, really gets, how IoT is affecting our industry and is partnering with some of these big IoT players to come up with a great solution. So we're very, very pleased to have KMC on as a sponsor this year. I'll be up there covering their global event coming up.
Sure, the 2016 KMC Genius Summit. It's going to be at the Longham Luxury Hotel in Chicago, Illinois. Yeah, and special thanks to Tim Vogel. Tim has been very, very supportive of the Control Trends Awards. And like you said, KMC is interesting in the fact that they do big and small so well. They've also, they're big Niagara, OEM. They provide the Tritium products, but they also have, they have their own stack. They're working with the J2 Innovation to come up with some really, incredible solutions. So they can handle, they can handle it all from the small, like we always say, the race to the small space. That's where 80% of the market is. And most of the buildings that we drive by on a daily basis lack integration. They lack connection to the grid. They lack anything more than, basically thermostats. So a lot of room, and these are the great products that'll get us into this, where we start really and truly controlling, all the costs, the efficiencies, bring all those operational realities, into play. So well done,
all right,
Capes.
buddy. Well, listen, let's hop straight into the big news of the week, Kenny. Our good friend and great in our industry, Nino DeCosmo, announced Thursday that he has moved on to another opportunity outside of our industry. And Nino's going to be missed. But I tell you what, it sort of doesn't surprise me. Nino is one of the really, really bright guys. And we'll talk about, he was the inaugural person that we interviewed for Control Trends People, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the show. But I think the message here is that, Nino moved on, just apparently had an opportunity he could not refuse, and, left on very good terms with Honeywell and with Niagara. I think everybody at Tritium is going to miss Nino. I think the industry is going to miss Nino. I think he was one of the really bright guys in our industry. So what are your thoughts, Kenny, on this with Nino?
Well, firstly, I want to say is congratulations. We knew that Nino DeCosmo was special when we first met him. He was very gregarious. He was very intelligent. He was very motivated. He loved his job. But basically, like you say, he got recruited away, an opportunity that he and his family couldn't say no to. But some of the things that Nino had been famous to us in our short time that we've learned with him was his ability to be a leader. He was a leader that really motivated people. He took the hard jobs on, and he really did. He reminded me of a militarily general, that really he was relied on a lot of people. He delegated a lot of important things, and he really supported his team. But what a tremendous success! So we want to say thank you again for helping our industry move forward and advance. We wish Nino every success, and that so anything Control Trends could ever do for him in his new capacity, please get us the opportunity to work with you again. And I just want to wish you the best of luck, Nino DeCosmo.
Yeah, absolutely. Nino's a great guy, and we might even get a chance to have him come on the show maybe next week. I think he officially leaves on the 9th, but I know how much the Control Trends community meant to Nino, how much the industry meant to Nino. We had a chance to speak with him yesterday, on Friday, and had a nice conversation with Nino, and he said it was just really, really challenging because he loves the industry, loves Tritium, but I think he got just an offer that, as he said, he could not refuse, and in a different industry. And I think the thing about Nino is he does love a challenge. And I think, as he said, this was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I think he really angst over, taking the offer, because I think he does love this industry, and obviously thanks a lot of the people in the industry. So hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from Nino so he can address the Control Trends community right up top and directly. But I think they've got a great transition plan. Kenny, tell us a little bit about what's going to go on at Tritium until they get the new guy in. Or girl.
Well, sure. A company like Honeywell is ready for the transition. Again, it's all good stuff. In other words, it's a win-win. Jeff Tollner, he will be the interim general manager, and he comes from an incredible background too. Presently, Jeff Tollner is the vice president and general manager at Honeywell. He has over 25 years as a career specialist with Fortune 100 companies in the high-level software and hardware engineering. I mean, this guy's bright. He comes from a very, very interesting background. If you we use LinkedIn because it's so accessible, but if you go to Jeff's background summary, there's a picture of Jeff, the vice president and general manager at Honeywell out of Raleigh, North Carolina. But he specializes in utilities right now, but he's going to be the transitional interim leader of Tritium until they get an immediate replacement. But I'm sure he's going to take care of things, and they're not going to lose any ground. I'll tell you what, I think Nino had set this thing pretty much the structure of Niagara 4 in a transition. What's really touching about that is we did have that Control Trends people, Nino DeCosmo, up close and personal. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most interesting backgrounds because, again, they say that the situation shapes the man, or the man's situation man shapes the situation. You know, are leaders born, or are they a product of all their mentors? And what Nino does is he shares that with us. You know, who his ideas with the great leaders were, and how they mentored him in his career. And we're talking going all the way back to Ross Perot at EDS. So it's really interesting. Like you said, podcast where we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but it's just one of the best ones to start off. So we got Nino at the apex of his HVAC building management Niagara career.
Yeah, absolutely, Kenny. Absolutely. Well, listen, let's talk a bit about a couple of the posts we had up this week, and then we'll get on to our first guest, Ken Sinclair from AutomatedBuildings.com. So, Kenny, what do we have up first post-wise?
Well, we had, the bread and butter stuff, Eric. You know, we're in an HVAC industry that there's products being introduced every day, it seems, and they always try to, come out and make our life easier. So I'm getting a Control Trends voice message. Oh, by the way, we haven't had much traction. Just to digress real quickly, you put up a feature on our Control Trends site that says, get in touch with Ken and Eric and leave a message. We need to get our Control Trends community more involved with that, don't you think? Isn't that just an opportunity to get expert advice and solution support using that medium? Yeah,
absolutely. And you can see it on the page right now. It's actually right there on the left. You basically click on that, and you will get something called SpeakPipe. And you can start the recording, send it to us, and then what our hope is, we'll build a library of those. We'll actually reach out and ask a controls expert. So you can participate in two ways. Number one, obviously asking your question, which will be your voice, and the plan is we'll save that. Then we'll get a controls expert to answer your question. We'll marry those two together and hopefully create a library of questions and answers. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about that, Kenny. It's a good feature, so appreciate you thinking about that.
Well, it popped up on my screen, and I'll tell you what, I really like it because, I do the I watch this stuff, and I'll tell you what, there's no better way to pass on information and knowledge. There's different mediums, but the ability to do that easy now, just making a recorded message, it doesn't get any simpler than that. Okay, the first post we had up was actually a nice little feature that you put up there. It was called the Smart Building Controls Rewind, Tree Sullivan. And we all know that Tree Sullivan is she's the eyes and ears out there in Silicon Valley for Control Trends. And Therese has, she's got her, finger on the heartbeat of Silicon Valley. We work with Josh Bradshaw now a little bit, but Therese has been a nice solution for us because she is out there where 30% of the world's economy seems to be coming through Silicon Valley. It's where all the venture capitalists lurk, waiting for the newest technology. So it's a great rewind, and this stuff doesn't get old. It's from July 2016. It primarily discusses and reviews the Realcomm IBCon show, but again, there's so much technology involved, and Therese also is a featured editor on AutomatedBuildings.com, and she keeps talking about the latest technologies and how that's going to impact the world we live in. And in particular, there was the ecobee purchased by Amazon, and when a company like ecobee gets that kind of a big, deep pocket support, what kind of innovation products and how those innovative products will impact the world we live in, and how it's all going to link back to smart grid and automated demand response.
Yeah, Kenny, if you think about it, and the reason we prompted sort of this rewind thing is that, obviously we have interviews on Control Talk now, the Smart Buildings videocast and podcast. And I think the deal is we have so many great interviews, so many insightful interviews, but you don't necessarily want to go back and listen to a whole podcast or watch a whole video cast where we're talking about the control news of the week. We call it Control Talk Now, news of the week. So it's really sort of a combination. If you think about the Smart Buildings videocast and podcast, is a combination of the news of the week plus these great interviews. So we want to go back and break some of these really good interviews out, let them be standalone, so you can go back and reference some of these, and they're just great interviews. And when I look and think about some of the interviews we had over the last, since the beginning of the show, but just here recently, the last year or so, it's something. It's a lot of extra work, but it's something that I'm endeavoring to capture and make sure that we get up on the site.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Eric. And again, I think that you don't have time maybe to listen to the entire podcast, but if you break it down into sections, I think we made it very worthwhile, so that if you do get a chance to listen to this, you'll get a chance to see and hear the latest and greatest come out of Silicon Valley.
Absolutely, buddy. All right, what do we have up next?
Well, next we have, again, nuts and bolts, Honeywell's Webs AX 3.8.111. In parentheses, we have the security version, which is the 3.8.U1, which is the packaged software release updates with Spider, Striker, and Venom and BACnet FF programming tools. So it's good stuff because in order to get the full benefit and to begin to use Niagara 4, you have to upgrade all your stuff to 3.8. And once you take it from 3.8, then you can work with Niagara. You can migrate to the Niagara 4. And so basically the most important thing is that this is it supports the new Web 8000 based controllers, the Java Web Start application, which solves that little pain in the butt that Java caused when you every time you go there, it would probably disconnect you. You couldn't access it remotely because there would be a security file that wasn't happy or something. So now this Java Web Start application is a great tool that alleviates any of those issues. Windows 10 operating system and an auto download of the Java security policy files, which were the problem or what caused the problem. So it's a very good value proposition. So taking your legacy controllers, your Webs 300Es, 600Es, 700s, and integrating them into your new projects, your N4 based projects. This is where we're going to go in our industry collectively. So all the major OEMs are encouraging their installed base to understand that there's a Niagara 4 out there. This Niagara 4 requires some upgrades, and in order to transition from your existing legacy controllers, there's some work to be done. So get in touch with your local Honeywell Webs distributor, and you'll be working with one of their contractors, and they'll get you up to speed.
Very, very cool, Kenny. And I tell you what, big week this week for us personally. I've alluded to on the podcast a bunch about a passionate project I have, which is called a podcast called Control Trends People, really the life stories of the people that make our industry great. Well, we launched the first two podcasts this week. We started out with aforementioned Nino DeCosmo. And so I want to take a minute and sort of talk about that, Kenny. And if you will notice across the top of controltrends.com, right across the top, you see something called the Podcast Network. If you basically click on that, Kenny, it's going to take you to a new site. It's called the Control Trends Podcasting Network, which is going to be a network of different podcasts, including Control Talk Now. But we got several shows already. We got Innovation Generation, which is going to be a new one that Rob Allen and the Young Guns are going to be coming up with. We obviously had Control Talk Now. Will be up there, just the podcast version. You'll still be able to get that on the Control Trends site. And plus you got Control Trends People, which is where Nino's particular blog came up. So again, if you sort of come through, you can see we got the cool podcast player here. You basically click on the button and you're into that episode. So we're really excited about that, Kenny. We're going to be reaching out to other people. More and more people are using podcasts as a medium, and I think we're going to become the preferred host. Sort of the one place you can go to and get all the really cool podcasts. So guys like Phil Zito and other people will endeavor to get their podcast up on this site as well. But I got to tell you, this first interview with Nino DeCosmo was pretty darn special.
Sure was, Eric, because, again, I've been doing this a long time, and again, I've had experiences, and an organizational success is driven, primarily by its leaders, by its the CEOs, the general managers, because it's not luck or they're not picked at random. These guys and women have histories of proven performance, so that when they get to these prominent positions, it's always really, really cool to look back and ask them, kind of reverse engineer your careers. How'd you get started? Some of these people, they knew when they were cognizant of education and technical stuff, they wanted to do this. They wanted to be an engineer. They wanted to get into IT. They really enjoyed writing software. They took things apart. They were in the basement late at night when other kids were watching TV. So they were driven by initiative. Some of them were serendipity. Some of these guys didn't really intend to work in the building automation or HVAC industry. They came in as a corollary professional kind of like turn, a pivot point. But basically, it's not magic. These people have invested just tremendous amounts of time and energy, and for them to share that information, how they got their leadership, what they believe great leaders were all about, They share some of the great mentors and some of the great advice that they've been given over the course of their histories and their careers, and then some of the great advice that they give to the young people out there and anybody in the industry. So some enduring insights, self-told anecdotes about the triumphs and setbacks that molded these people's careers and shaped the Control Trends people for throughout their professional journeys. But I think, again, we are trying to gain parity as an industry. The more people know about the people in our industry, it's a very competitive industry within itself, so it didn't have that giant marketing effort out there. But we need to get more talent into our industry, and having this deep insight to some of the great peoples and leaders that led corporations, how they got started, will bring more and more positive attention and energy to our industry.
Absolutely, Kenny. If you want to go to this site directly, the URL is podcast plural.controltrends.org if you want to mark that. But again, you can get to it through the Control Trends site. So these sites will go hand in glove together. But very, very thrilled. The interview with Nino was great. The interview we had later in the show with Mark Peacock, fantastic too. And then I think next week we'll drop the episode we had with Mike Marston where he talks about being the sixth Beatle. There's going to be another great one. But, just Kenny, it's very, very impressive to me. Just, as you know, we think we got the greatest people in the world in our industry. Just an opportunity to sort of find out. So again, Control Trends people is sort of what they did before they got into the industry, what shaped them into being the cool people they are now. And it's so cool, so fun. So be sure to check that out. And speaking of that, Kenny, one of the ones we have not interviewed yet that we should and will soon is our friend Ken Sinclair at AutomatedBuildings.com. Ken has got the September issue out. So how about introducing him before we bring him on the show?
We get an opportunity to preview and then talk about Ken St. Clair's most recent edition. The September edition of AutomatedBuildings.com is the Self-Learning Edge Revolution. And again, Ken's the editor and publisher, owner, and I call him an oracle from reading this September edition because I really think Ken's deeply immersed in our industry, so deep that he can see trends coming. He can see, he feels that sensation. I've seen this before, and he makes a couple of very interesting observations of where he thinks the industry is going to go here in the very near future. Welcome to the show,
Well,
Ken.
hang on real quick. Hang on, Ken, before we bring you on. Kenny, you bring up an very interesting analogy. I mean, we've called him, the prophet, him and Jim Young, the Nostradamuses, but now I'm thinking about the Matrix, right? Which, we've sort of drawn that parallel to the internet of things. So I like the Oracle analogy. If you've never seen The Matrix, it's definitely worth checking that movie out because I think we're getting there. I talked to our friend Anthony Bronzo, Kenny, and Ken, you can hear this too. Anthony's a young guy we're friends with, and Anthony's big thing now is virtual reality. He is talking about how you put these headsets on, and he said it's unbelievable that he's in this virtual reality world where he says it's just like he's, in a whole different reality, Kenny. And he is saying that one of the things they're predicting there is that people will all of a sudden use that as the de facto way to sort of get around. And so they'll, everybody will wear these headsets and it'll be a virtual reality, kind of like the whole scene in The Matrix where they were in a virtual reality. So I guess, Ken Sinclair, welcome to the show. And do you have a chocolate chip cookie for us?
A chocolate chip cookie. If I did,
It's
I would have probably eaten it.
It's part of the movie, Ken. If you didn't see the Matrix, you won't get that.
Okay. No, yeah. I did not see The Matrix.
Yeah, well you got to watch it because I tell you what, it's where we're at right now. It's one of the all-time greats, and the Oracle basically gives the hero of the movie, he says, you can just take a chocolate chip cookie and you'll be right as rain.
There you go. I do have a virtual reality mask, though. So
do you really have? So have you played around with that at all?
And actually, the other thing is I'm pleased to say that on the cover of our magazine this month, if you look right above the lady from Intel's head, there's actually a guy sitting with a virtual reality mask, looking at all his Windows apps, and that came from across my desk. All the stuff I have no idea what to do with. I basically provide a link to it so you can see what you think it's all about. But anyway, what this is it's a company that actually has come up with a Windows interface that you put on your mask and you start opening Windows, and so you basically create your control room standing there looking at your mask. I thought that was fairly close to where we might be going. Maybe that's over the edge. I'm not sure. I guess of talking about the edge and self-learning, but there is certainly a lot of stuff that is over the edge that I'm not exactly sure where it's all going to fit, but it's exciting stuff for sure. Especially
well, Anthony was saying that I think Sony's coming out with one, and he and his girlfriend went down to demo it, right? And he said to put the glasses on, and the one virtual reality thing that they were in was you were actually in like a tank. They dropped you in the ocean. And he was saying it was so cool. It's like you're right in the ocean. You're seeing all the stuff that goes on. And then out of the blue, a great white shark comes and starts attacking the cage. He said it was so real. His girlfriend, who's never had a panic attack right there in the store. She had to take it off. So it is sort of interesting when we start thinking about the Internet of Things and virtual reality, and what that could mean to, just like you said, now all of a sudden maybe you've got an app where you're going through your building through a virtual reality sort of thing, and then with the collection of the data and all, you're actually able to see the inside of an air handling unit, or maybe even the inside of a control loop. So I think it could change everything. So your assignment, Ken Sinclair, before we talk to you again, is you've got to see the movie The Matrix, and then maybe you'll agree with me that Ken Smyers is the one. So we'll see. You're the Oracle, he's the one, and I'll get the little black glasses, and maybe I can be Morpheus. Who knows?
Yeah. Actually, the other one that's on the virtual reality while we're talking about that is Mars. So did you see that movie?
Yes, with Matt Damon.
Yes. So actually what happens is you put on your mask and you're Matt Damon sitting on Mars, and you look around and you're there. There's no Earth. You're on Mars. It's actually an interesting one that kind of bends your mind a bit. So you actually have the experience, not from watching it from Earth, but actually being on Mars, being inside the movie. So it's pretty neat.
No, it's cool stuff. Well, listen, another great episode you have out in September. Tell us about the theme this month.
Okay, it kind of evolved from last month's when we started talking about the power of edge devices and the hybrid edge devices, and came to the realization that these weren't just new controllers; these were powerful new controllers. And the big shift was that these controllers are starting to look more like cell phones than they do laptops. And kind of a simple realization that our whole industry has been built on panels and stuff that look like laptops, and certainly Intel has ruled the world for a lot of the panels. But now devices are coming, low-cost devices, powerful devices that look like our phones, and we can relate to them really quick because we understand we've got what we're talking about in our pocket. And so we say, oh, okay, we put one of those in for a controller. All of a sudden, we have a whole bunch of advantages. The obvious one is we have a way better cloud connection. We have incredible amount of memory and an incredible amount of processing power on the edge. So last month I had to get my mind around that and kind of understood maybe what that might mean. Then this whole self-learning piece came, is if we have in fact that power, then in fact it's the self-learning is closer than we thought, because the whole self-learning process, if we kind of imagined it in old school, we could never really understand how it might actually work, because we had to move all of the data from the field to the cloud and then start coming up with some learning that we could do a better thing. But if we can actually keep a lot of that data out at the edge, then all of a sudden the self-learning becomes simpler, because we can self-learn in pieces. We don't have to self-learn the whole thing. We can learn everything we need to know about this door, or everything we need to know about this sensor, or everything we need to know about this air handler. So really pleased that some folks from the industry are well into this self-learning and sort of portrayed exactly how they see this happening. And there's pretty much everybody seems to be working on that piece. So it kind of all came together. And if I can keep talking without breathing, the other revelation that that occurred is all of a sudden in my mind it said, "Wow, this is just like the old days when I was basically converting all that stuff from pneumatics to DDC, and it was like a whole new way of doing things. And in the way of doing things came completely new powers and stuff. And the parallel was just, in my mind, was just amazing that this was just another revolution of exactly the direct digital control revolution, which I grew up and sort of hung my hat on. That here we go again. And it's a self-learning edge revolution. This is going to empower the kids. This is going to bring the millenniums into the industry. This is going to change the industry. And in a 5-10 year period, you won't be able to recognize the industry. That's what dawned on me.
So Ken, how do the old dogs like Kenny and me and the older people that are in our industry, how do we adapt? I mean, what's the key in your opinion to surviving this, if you will?
Talk to the kids. In addition to that, though, it's hitting us daily. And again, I keep drawing parallels to the DDC revolution. And I'm not sure if that's, sometimes it's probably shooting myself in the foot. They say, what is that old guy talking about? But when we were doing the DDC revolution, people were playing with computers like people are playing with their phones now. And except we didn't have such wide acceptance. But people who played with computers, they got the whole DDC thing right away because they understood what the computer could do. They were playing with it. They loaded up programs. They had, conceptually, they could grasp what was going on. And I think we've got exactly the same situation now that the phone technology, the people, what everybody can do with their phone is way beyond what they can do with their controllers. So it's funny that it's the technology goes ahead and then it makes us aware of what it can do. And I think that we are all learning from this technology, and it's just a matter of rolling your eyes back and saying, what can these phone systems do? The other side of it is we have this whole new generation of millenniums that has grown up, and some of us old guys, grew up with radio and and early TV, and we had to learn streaming and stuff like that. These millenniums, when they were first there, their mom gave them a phone to play with, and to them, their whole life can be controlled by a phone. Their new workplace, they don't want to do anything they can't do with a phone. So for them, there's no learning curve, and they completely look at the industry differently. And so what they're saying is, why aren't these controllers more phone-like? And I think that's what the self-learning edge revolution, in my mind, is about.
Well, that's really cool stuff. And I agree. It's like to get something done, there's different parts and pieces, like a puzzle. And we've always relied on a puzzle piece that looked like this, where we controlled things and fitted them into places where we were very comfortable with. And now we see these new millennials who coming in, and their puzzle fit is an entirely different fit. And so what we will support them probably, and one of your chief interests is to maintain these archives, create the archives, make them available, and then make an index or something that's much easier to find and reference, make that accessible for these millennials so that they can come in and basically supersede us. We're just going to have a whole different set of people in the industry, and they're going to be coming in from the IoT side instead of the technician and the equipment side.
Yeah, I think Therese Sullivan has a couple nice articles in this issue. One of them, she's talking about some of the new players, like for instance, it's who invested the money in ecobee? It's was it Intel or was it Google that invested the money? Therese talks about that. Kenny, who was it that invested all the money in ecobee?
It was one of the the big .com people. I'm looking for it right now, but I just came from San Diego, and yeah, Ecobee's all over the place. My daughter works for San Diego Gas and Electric, Sempra Energy, and she went to a symposium where the people brought in different technologies and presented them, and Ecobee was one of them. She actually got a sample, and she got the brochure, and it's all to do with that ADR, and of course, California has a different sense of urgency than we do, but yeah, Ecobee just got a big partner, and Ken St. Clair, why don't you respond back to the new players, and like you said, they're coming from a phone orientation. They're coming from technically competent and very suave and very, very comfortable with integration, and then they look at our industry and they're confounded by its complexity, its deliberate complexity, its non-openness, its non-friendly demeanor.
Well, I think the big thing is they grew up in an IoT world like us. We're still trying to get our head around what IoT might mean, and to them, they just don't understand what building automation and why we would do it that way. And I think that's the neat thing too, is they're so different. They're going to see this whole problem completely different than we did. In my ramblings there, I pointed out that where I made my living basically taking old pneumatic logic and converting it into programming, and basically looking at trends and discovering what the building was actually telling me, and basically writing algorithms to fix that. And I thought, wow, that was back in the 80s. That was neat stuff. I mean, people would go, ooh, but now it's obvious that that'll fall into a self-learning pattern, and the idea of a controller to basically go out there and just sit. The controller may not do anything for the first week. It may just learn, and then it'll actually say, I think the best way for me to control this situation is this way. And that's what the machine learning piece is going to be like. So in fact, my thought process from the 80s is going to actually be replaced with machine learning. That became obvious. So that's pretty neat stuff. I mean, it's going to take a while for that to work, but everybody's working on it. And the other thing is in our industry, everybody working on it is like, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 people at the tops. And industry, everybody working on it is 20, 30, 40 million people actually working on it. And we've got these folks that are basically looking for a product, looking for a kickstart they can get out. It's going to be a different environment for sure. And there's this, don't worry about our industry, changing overnight. That's never going to happen. But I think what I'm trying to do here is just be the harbinger and say that some of this stuff is in fact happening, and I think it's probably happening faster than you think.
I totally agree, and that's why I say it's happening right under our noses, because that's the difficulty with I think watching the way things change around us. Some of it's immediate, like to get back to your question of who invested in Ecobee, Eric, and this is why things can change so rapidly, is Amazon Alexa Fund invests in smart thermostat company Ecobee, $35 million. And then that makes a company like Ecobee be able to change so radically that we knew this kind of a home contextualization and home integration was on its way. We knew that the government initiatives, the smart grid, and we knew that ADR and automated demand response was very important. And we knew that there would be linkages that would occur, products that would become those bridges that would take the initiative to make every single house smart, so it communicated in both directions. And what was the most important, tool or bridge in that was the thermostat. So Ecobee, founded in 2007, has now grown to triple its size, quadruple its size actually, and has raised over $51 million in venture capital. So somebody's very concerned that what Ecobee is doing is an answer to is a solution to what they're trying to achieve. So when you have that kind of dynamic, content, anything can happen quickly. So I think when you say about being a harbinger, Ken, I think it's really important to understand where the guardrails are. It might not happen overnight, but it's certainly going in that direction. And if it does get this violent investment of capital, it can happen overnight.
Yeah, I think that is the point. The other thing that I pointed out in my editorial is these new edge devices will not come from our industry, but will land on us in mass-produced edge devices that the kids will repurpose and program for our industry's use. And every time there's one of those new inventions, one of the, like an Amazon, there's a big trend towards all the voice devices and stuff. So all we need is some bright kid who has an inkling of what's going on in our industry to adapt that device. And then all of a sudden, he just leapfrogs anything we're doing and starts putting a self-learning piece on it. And he has an amazing product. And we were preoccupied in the past about trying to keep all our products talking together. But of course, because it is IoT, that's sort of inherent in each of these products, although there certainly is some challenges there to try and make that all come together. But I think what will happen is the individual products will be so powerful and so cheap that we'll just simply buy them and start using them, and then we'll try and figure out how the heck we're going to bring them into our systems. And that'll be the challenge for our industry for sure. The other thing that keeps coming up too is that we've always been a product orientated industry, and the importance of the product, the importance of the actual electronic card is basically diminished, and to the point that it's almost disappeared. It becomes a commodity, and eventually I think will evolve to a commodity that is this, just by logic, will have to be the same commodity that is used by the masses. So ever which devices become the mass devices, they will be the devices that the new industry, the new self-learning edge will be part of. And so the hardware part of our industry will disappear, but that will not diminish our value. Our value will be in the fact that we will be technology distributors, and that we need to somehow make sense of all of this and basically put it into the buildings and get the result that we normally get. But it's going to require some radical thinking. There's a big, giant leap from where we are now to where this is going to happen. And as usual, there'll be the early adopters and a lot of fun stuff. And again, I just akin this to 1979 and stuff. And when I came to the coast in 81, and Delta Control and Reliable Control were literally building these things in their basement, and every model got a little bit better. And I was a consultant, and I was actually approving them and using them on projects, and it was the best of times. It was
all
just
right, Oracle.
unique.
Hold on, yeah. Oracle. You have said a whole bunch. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, regarding the distributors, I think there's a great article by Greg Barnes from Active Logic, sort of what the IoT distributor looks like and will look like. But the other thing, you were with us at Realcomm Ibicon this year out in San Jose, and I don't know whether you remember or not, but right next door to the Realcomm Ibicon show was a sensor show, and we didn't get a chance to run over there, Ken, but the people we talked to that did were just amazed at the sensors that were available and the price of the sensors that were available. So I think that's a huge piece. So to me, the best analogy I can give, it's a little bit like an anaconda, right? And an anaconda does not just come and squeeze its prey right away. My understanding is what it does is it loosely wraps the coils around and gradually squeezes, and it gets to a certain point, and all of a sudden, boom, it squeezes the life out of you, and then it's too late. So Kenny and I have been sort of sounding that alarm for a while. We really think that the coil's been wrapped around us for a while, and then to see things like Amazon investing in ecobee and the sort of race to the small space and the IoT coming together, I think we're getting closer and closer to the point where the snake makes the last big squeeze and swallows the industry whole, and it's never the same as it was before.
Yeah,
You took the wind out of our sails, Eric. Wow,
Yeah,
go slower, man. I just got squeezed, and the life's coming back. But
well, the Oracle would tell you just have a chocolate chip cookie, and or Ken, you don't know this, but Kenny does. There's a scene at the beginning of the movie where our hero, he has the opportunity to either see reality. And the guy basically says, take the red pill and you'll see reality and you'll never be the same again. Or you can take the blue pill and you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll be, you won't know because you won't be able to see it. So I think I got that right. So, but you're the Oracle, Ken. So you're the one who gets to offer us a chocolate chip cookie or the red pill or the blue pill.
Well, actually, the observation I'd like to make is that snake isn't as well organized as a snake in your analogy. And it's not nearly as solid. So when it tries to grab us, IoT, if IoT is the snake, IoT is full of holes. And so when IoT tries to grab us, it is actually, by nature, IoT allows you, if you're very small and slippery, to slip away and escape this giant choking hold of the snake. So that's my standard of it.
Well, that's a great analogy because, and that's exactly right. And see, I think that's why the September edition can again compliments because it's so well balanced. In other words, we're talking about extreme in the future, but we're also talking many of the articles that you have are the old school, very reliable. I mean, there's just running across those interviews. You got wireless I/O for everyday BMS. You've got landmark credentialing goes global. Understanding lighting, great poster by Mike Welsh, CNS, and Rush Air from Fullman. You have expert advice for facility managers. So, in other words, we're still grounded very, very, very firmly in our industry, and we know that this isn't magic. You can't invent, physical properties. They have to be put into place, and it takes people to do it. So I think what we're doing is we're encouraging the young people to come into our industry and influence us, those still in the industry, to start getting ready for some serious changes, get out of the sweet spots, adopt rather than resist. Because we had an interesting talk with one of the CEOs in the business, one of the top guys in the business, and he said there's 1,000 self-appointed defenders of the past. Every time a new idea comes in, there's just this incredible resistance, this impulse to resist and say, nah, it's not going to work, where we've seen it time and time again, literally, take, hold. And if you would have been an early adopter, you'd have been a very successful business person because you'd have taken it as an investment opportunity and thrown your chips in the right direction instead of putting them on the old stuff and watch them whittle away.
Well, I think the other thing that's kind of tricky about it this time too, Oracle and Ken Smyers, is that, there's a show Kenny and I watch called Silicon Valley, and you hear this statement, which is being too early is being wrong too. So I think that's another dimension of this. Before, I think it was difficult to be too early with stuff. And now I think there's, more so than ever, if you're too early, you're wrong too. So very interesting stuff. And two great articles from Therese Sullivan in this week's episode. And then Rocky Moore from Blue Ridge Technologies talks about lighting and the use of BACnet. So another very, very rich, if you will, Ken, episode of automatedbuildings.com. So as we're fond of saying, nothing's obvious to the uninformed. And we think you guys do a great job at automatedbuildings.com and giving the Control Trends community sort of the information they need to see that snake coming.
Actually, I don't know if you noticed me smiling a while back there when Ken was talking, and I thought it was funny that he chose for those root articles the substance of what we believe, a wireless article, because of course we're all young enough or old enough to remember that it wasn't all that long ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that we were saying, you think this wireless stuff will catch on? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it will.
So maybe that's where we'll be with. Do you think this edge self-learning stuff will ever catch on? 5-6 years from now, we might, yeah, maybe. So anyway, I thought that was funny because that whole wireless thing, we've all is probably a good example because, and frankly, the first wireless stuff was awful and it didn't work. But the stuff that's built on stuff that looks like phone technology seems to be almost bulletproof and amazing. So there you go. Actually, the article is interesting because the article is about wireless I/O. So it's like, which is almost like an oxymoron.
So, Ken, to you, is machine learning different than artificial intelligence? I know we've talked a bit, and you've had articles from Igor Mesic, if you will, and we've had him on and interviewed him. Is artificial intelligence, in your opinion, different from machine learning, or are they the same thing?
No, machine learning is just very methodical. It just takes big data and it looks for patterns, and then you recognize the patterns and act on them. So it's actually, if you have the time, linked to this issue is Mike from Computrol's presentation to BOMA, and it's very well done. I actually watched the whole thing from stem to stern, which I seldom do because I have to watch so much stuff that I tend to skip and stuff, but I actually listened and watched. And it's pretty neat because he explains exactly that, how self-learning is different than artificial intelligence. He also explains how he's using it in our industry, how he collects data, how you can make better decisions. And yeah, so I think it's, as a primer, if you're trying to get your mind around machine learning, this video is a great resource, and it has some validity in the fact that it was a presentation at a BOMA course. I think that's another thing that's happening too. Is it used to be, I hate to say this, it used to be that control trends and automated buildings were the place where absolutely everything happened or evolved from, and that's no longer the situation. Is we have pockets of people who are doing amazing things with amazing organizations, and actually the other thing that is a big part of our September issue actually came from my roots. I don't know if you originally remember way back in the old days when automated buildings was getting started. I was wrote the automation column for Engineered Systems, and Engineered Systems had an incredible article written on basically why don't our systems look more like hobby. They called them hobby computers, which brought up some objections to whether that should be hobby computers or maker devices, and introduced us to the maker culture and a whole bunch of stuff there. But this was just, hey, there's these $35 devices out there that do everything we do and even more, and we can even load our software onto them. Why aren't we using them? And that came from Engineered Systems. I posted that on our site, and I think we've got like about 35 comments, and there's an amazing conversation going there on that as well. So we can't close our eyes to where this information is going to come from. I think that's the message there.
Yeah, well, I saw the Hobbyist Platform Powerful Edge Controllers by George Thomas, and he goes into that in depth too.
That's his response to that article, actually. Yeah,
there's just so much content, Ken. I would remind all the Control Trends listeners to, make time, spend time to learn, because these are the eye-opening articles that you're going to read that give you the help your premonitions become more accurate and help you, motivate you into action. Because I think George Thomas is a brilliant guy, and he's been in the business a very long time. He's also a member of the Hall of Fame. He's laying it out here on the line about, if he goes to an IBM thing and he's impressed about a $35 platform, you better take a look at it.
Well, he's got the same problem as we all do, is that these $35 platforms are going to take over and radically change his business. The other thing, too, back to Greg Barnes's technology distributors, that has real resonance as well, because what it kind of brings up the issue is that we all now have shifted since our technology, our electronic bits and cards and IOs and little control panels that we sell is becoming less and less a part of what we do. What becomes more and more a part of what we do is education. And we're basically all in the education business. And so we have to spend a lot of time, get informed, and then analyze what the heck that means to our clients, and then somehow package it and go back and train our clients. And actually, what Greg has done is he's put together an actual session just to do that, to basically reach out to his people and train them. And I think more and more that's going to be the pattern. And whether you're a systems distributor or whether you're an actual integrator, or it doesn't matter who you are, a consultant, basically what's becoming the biggest part of your job is to try and get your mind around what all this change might mean and simply put it into some kind of an education program for your client. The other problem with doing this is your client sometimes may or may not know more than you do about all of these subjects. So it's a tricky program to put together, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. But anyway, it is an interesting shift, as I see. It also reflects that we're less in the real world of bits and bytes and pieces and cards and stuff, and we're more into intellectual property and educating our client.
Very, very cool. There you have it. It's our friend Ken Sinclair, a.k.a. The Oracle from AutomatedBuildings.com. That's on the street now. I encourage you to click and check that out. Kenny Smyers, I tell you what, I'm feeling inspired here. I think we're going to have a giveaway between now and October. Ken Sinclair, you're going to have to watch The Matrix to understand. But what we basically want to do is reach out in comments underneath this post at Control Trends. We want to hear in your comment, and the best comment's going to win. A couple of things. Number one, how you see things shifting, which article you like best in the September episode of AutomatedBuildings.com and why. And most importantly, who do you think the one is in this change we're having? Okay, so we'll review those. Ken will review it with you too. And when we have you on next week, we will announce our winner, and they will get a box of cookies sent to them. Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
Next week or next month?
Well, next month.
Yeah,
So you got 30 days to sort of check the September issue out. So again, the criteria is you got to say which is your favorite article and why from the September issue of AutomatedBuildings.com. And then you got to say who is quote unquote the one. So if you've seen The Matrix, you will understand that. If you haven't, I think it's paramount you watch this movie, because to me, The Matrix really summarizes sort of where we're at in this whole transition. And so you got to say, I think Ken Smyers is the one, or Greg Barnes is the one, or Mike Salvador Dolly Welch is the one, and why. And just submit it in comments. Ken Sinclair, a.k.a. The Oracle, will review those. And when we have you on next month to talk about the October issue, we will announce our winner. And we will send them a box of cookies, because the Oracle, at the very least, is going to give you a box of cookies. What do you say?
There you go. Okay, I shall watch The Matrix.
Oh, you got to. That's your assignment, because you're the Oracle.
That's
Ken.
my assignment. Yep.
Yeah. All right,
Well,
Ken.
Ken, just to warn you, there's 3 of them. So
No, just episode 1. Just the first
just episode 1 I have to watch? Okay.
No, just one. Just watch the first
you'll
one.
like it. If you watch the first one, it should lure you into watching the second and third ones. There might even be 4 of them, huh?
The first one's the only one that's relevant.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Ken. It's been a great opportunity to share information and get better resolution on what's coming at us. It's a lot of change, a lot of IoT possibilities, and which ones are most relevant and significant, and the time frame to deal with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super.
Ken Sinclair, our guest this week, who will be at the 2016 Control Trends Awards. So we're looking forward to having you there as well, Ken. And keep up the great work. AutomatedBuildings.com is the place to go to stay informed. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, got time for one more?
Of course.
I forgot to give our education sessions at AHR Expo a plug. They are also on this issue. The program's been laid out, and we also have the connection, collective connected collaboration. There we go. This year, and it's the power of the people productivity. And of course, that's going to be videoed by Control Trends, and that's always been a great annual event. And we're hoping to get a whole bunch more folks involved in it this year. So we want everybody to give it a plug, and I've been requesting everybody I can to help us promote those free education sessions. And I think it's another place that the whole industry just comes together and does an amazing job, and I thank them very much for that.
Well, absolutely, Kenny. You know, we're very pleased to video it. Listen, is there a link or something that we can put up on Control Trends to give people more information? But if you're at AHR, I think the long and the short of it, if you're going to AHR this year, there are at least two things you don't want to miss. One of them being the Control Trends Awards, and the secondly being your education session that you're talking about. You got a couple of them. So are there some links that we can put up on Control Trends?
There's under September reviews, the education session, AHR Expo Las Vegas. Perfect. If you click there, the actual whole program and the times and the speakers and everything is there.
Awesome.
With great big link. So if you just link to that, that would be great.
Okay, we'll make sure we get a link on Control Trends. Again, Ken, we're up against it, buddy, but thanks so much. Hey, Kenny, as usual, man, great stuff from our friend, the Oracle, Ken Sinclair. And I tell you what, looks like we got two more posts, so let's talk about our next post.
Sure. Well, this one here, again, it's nuts and bolts. And again, the industry that we're in is just, it's a gigantic industry. And you have macro levels and you have micro levels. This is a macro level post, a building technologies office, a word from the BTO's acting director. This gentleman here, you talk about jobs and who's got some important work to do every morning. David Nemtso, he's the acting director of BTO. He talks about, life from his perspective. And so this post was taken from the Building Technologies Digest, which provides a weekly roundup of the latest news, funding opportunities, reports, events, and webinars from DOE, Department of Energy's Building Technology Office. So basically, the office is designed to, or it's tasked to accelerate the development and facilitate the deployment of energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies and market-based solutions that strengthen U.S.'s energy security, environmental quality, and economic vitality. So if you read this thing, he talks about, he's been charged to energize people about he spoke with two distinct audiences about the importance of buildings in the U.S. energy space, the FEMP Energy Exchange Conference and the Alliance to Save Energy. So all these professionals, and he says, but I suspected not all of whom recognize the scope of the opportunities the U.S. building sector offers for reducing energy consumptions and greenhouse gas emissions. So despite of all the current, all the technologies that we've deployed successfully, all the progress we've made, we have not even touched the real true iceberg. We've got the top of it, but most of it's under the water, and we can't see it yet. So he says basically our 130 million residential units in the United States, most of which you think is homes, we at the Building Technologies Office are prone to think of them as energy consumers, energy consuming structures. And then the 5+ commercial buildings, 5 million commercial buildings, offices, schools, hospitals. So basically, together, all of these buildings represents 40% of the energy consumed within the United States, 76% of all the electricity, 34% of all the U.S. gas house emissions are caused by these energy consumers. So he says that we got our work cut out for us. That as an industry, we are just getting started. Let's roll up our sleeves and start putting these great solutions that we've just talked about this afternoon, Eric, to work.
Well, absolutely, Kenny. And then that brings us to episode 2 of Control Trends People, our good friend, Mark Peacock. Kenny, what can you tell us about Mark?
Well, I've known Mark now for 12 plus years. He's always been in the position where I see him up on stage. I listen to him as a thought leader in very many capacities. But he now takes charge in many regards for the security. Cybersecurity is a big issue with Mark. He's got a passion for it. He writes a lot of information for the executives to consider. The bottom lines. If you don't invest in cybersecurity, you probably not like the results and regret it. Secondly, he's great at marketing. He runs a marketing for LinkSpring and Conex Energy, and I don't think there's a day that goes by that you don't see Mark posting in one publication or another. He's also an editor, contributing editor to Automated Buildings, and of course we changed the channels, Eric, and we're talking about the Control Trends Awards. Mark Peacock is the master of ceremonies from the get-go. He really helped us get the whole concept underway. Talk about a guy that's networked in this business. I don't know if anybody that can compare with Mark's deeply immersed networking. His Rolodex is probably the largest one out there.
Well, I tell you what, and I think the deal is Mark is the type of guy that he's a real giver. As a matter of fact, we named one of the awards, one of the most sought-after awards, I think, at the Control Trends Awards is the Peacock Award. It's an award where Mark picks out the person in the industry that is sort of giving back and making the industry better as a whole, which is what Mark did. You mentioned the fact when we got the Control Trends Award started, Mark reached out to us. We didn't really know Mark that well. Hey, guys, how can I help? I think it's a great idea and a great concept. I think it's indicative of the type of person that Mark is. So on Control Trends People, man, it's sort of Mark's story, very fascinating, sort of, I think where those values came from, about his time in New York City, Kenny, his influences, his mentors. So it's a really, really great segment on Mark Peacock, Control Trends People, which is episode 2. Encourage you to check that out. And then finally, Kenny, last but not least, Mark sent me a cool little video post. If you got a cool $3.2 million, you can, I guess the best way to set this up is, I'd like to be under the sea in an octopus's garden in the shade. In Dubai, you can buy a home that is partially underwater and above water. And I think that might be
3 stories, yeah.
3 stories. I think this might be something we can see. So Mark sent us a video to this, which you can see right there on Control Trends. But as usual, Mark is a guy who keeps up with the trends. And other thing I can tell you about Mark is Mark's a guy who shares. So if you haven't been lucky enough to meet Mark Peacock yet, he's very accessible. He's the vice president of marketing at LinkSpring. He's been in our industry for a while, as you hear in Control Trends People, but just a great guy. And I got to tell you something, Kenny. He is, I feel like it's a real blessing to know Mark, and he's turned to not only be a great business associate, but also a great friend.
I agree, and like you say, again, people that have passions, that really like what they do and believe in what they do, are successful, and being around successful people is what you want to do in our industry, because nothing ever works out completely, fully, 100%. But if you hang around with the people that know what's going on, have an idea for the future. We talked about Ken St. Clair being an oracle. I think Mark fits in that role many times. That he has been around and been involved in the industry. He knows what's coming next in many cases. So if you get a chance and you listen to his interviews and you read his editorials and you read some of the stuff he puts out on the internet and visit LinkSpring's site, you'll see he's on top of the cutting edge, the IoT edge devices.
Well, maybe Mark is the one. Maybe he is the one in our matrix sort of thing. All right, so there you go, Kenny. I think we have another week on Control Talk Now, the Smart Buildings Videos Cast and Podcast. Is very, very special thanks to all of our sponsors for the Control Trends Awards, specifically EasyIO and Mad Mike Marston and KMC Controls. A very special send-off to our friend Nino DeCosmo from Tritium, and a very special thanks to Mark Peacock and all the great stuff he does from LinkSpring. So with that, Kenny, I'll leave our audience with our usual sign-off. Be bold and stay in control.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Snyder. And that's a wrap. All right, buddy.
All right, how you feeling?